Hey everyone, welcome to the GTM News Show. I got a very special guest here today. I got Dennis Yu here today. Thanks, Dennis, for joining us.
What's up, Taylor?
Super great having you. So, I've been following you, maybe a mini fan, at least a mini fan. I've been following you for maybe 5 years or so, and seeing you involved in a lot of different areas of digital marketing. So I wanted to bring you on just to kind of go through a couple different areas that I think are really important. Things like the Facebook dollar a day strategy, content factory, a couple other things. Before we get
Yep.
into that, if anybody follows you on LinkedIn, which I recommend everyone should, because you always post very interesting content. I'd love to hear about what's keeping you busy right now. What's keeping you excited? What's keeping you in the proverbial game?
Well, for people that are in B2B and want to drive sales and marketing, which is what we're talking about here with the GTM podcast, I've been refining the dollar a day strategy, which you may have heard of the last 15 or 16 years, to do micro targeting based on relationships. So, for example, a friend of mine, he has an IV therapy company. He's got 30 some locations. He's selling products to 16,000 folks who buy his products. So it's definitely B2B. And the way he's grown his brand and been able to get more deals, sell more franchises, get more B2B kind of customers is by interviewing the top people in the industry with a
Mm-hmm.
podcast like what you have here. You know, this is a podcast to be able to share expertise, not sell anything. And this guy in the middle, Sam Tejada, he's so well known in the industry that he's got the CEOs of all the other major companies. And so what does he do? Brings them into the studio, does the podcast with them, turns it into a book. Because imagine long form content where you're interviewing an expert
Mm.
can be a podcast, can be a YouTube, can be an article, can be turned into a book, can be made a compilation, can be made, there's turned into all kinds of other derivative content, right? And so when you have all this derivative content, this is the thing that people don't understand because they just want to publish the book and that's it. Or they just want to publish the podcast and 23 people view that episode. What a shame, right? What a waste, especially you do all the video editing. So what we do is, let's say we have Dr. Robert Willix here, or we have some of these other people like Ben Crosby here. Ben Crosby started Tap Out Fitness, grew it to 500 locations, and now he runs Drip Bar, which is now at almost 450 some locations. Pretty big, right? So what do you think, Taylor, when Sam Tejada makes a post saying, such an honor to have Ben Crosby on the show, and then here's a summary of 5 things that we learned from Ben on how he grew from nothing to 500 locations. Right? Here's how he did private equity. Here's how he hired people. Here's how he set up operations. Here's how he did his marketing. Right? What do you think, Taylor, happens when Sam tags Ben Crosby and shares that on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube? What do you think Ben's going to do?
Gonna respond, gonna share it, gonna amplify it.
Right. But Ben might not see that because let's say Sam doesn't have any kind of audience. So we use dollar a day to target all of Ben's audience. So we go to Twitter. We can target any handle on Twitter, anybody, no matter how small they are. On LinkedIn, we can sort of target other people. We can still tag them. So every post that we make, which is honoring other people in the industry, we tag them and we're talking about them, not in a fake kind of way, not in a testimonial kind of way, but honoring them, sharing their actual expertise, kind of like what you're doing here, Taylor, right? So dollar a day strategy works super well when you already have B2B content that's honoring someone else, honoring your top
Mm.
customers, honoring your top partners. So I did the same thing here I just happen to use a book here, but this is the number one selling book in social media on Amazon right now. And it's on TikTok ads and TikTok marketing in general. And we have the number one best-selling book in Facebook ads, number one best-selling book in Google ads. My co-author sold 800,000 copies. He's the legend, Perry Marshall.
Wow.
And we did the same thing here. Who am I, like a dude who's almost 50, to be talking about TikTok, right? So what do? We round up some of the top people on TikTok. And I'm not super well known on TikTok. I don't even have very many followers, but I know a few people who have 6 million followers, 10 million followers on TikTok who are really big. And so I interviewed them, some in person, I flew to LA and scheduled a whole bunch of these videos on the beach and in mansions and things like that to make them look good. Cause I said, this is all about honoring you. We're featuring you, your expertise, what you did. And then they introduced me to all the other people. And I said, that is so cool. Can you introduce me to so-and-so? I'd love to be able to interview them and put them on the book, put them in the book and share their expertise. Why, sure. Let me just text them right now. So Taylor, I came into this not having the network to be able to legitimately say, here's what you need to do to be able to grow on TikTok and drive leads. But because I had at least one connection, I could reach all these other people. And so now inside this book, we have examples of B2B lead gen using TikTok. Because did you know that when someone says something good about you, you can turn that into a Spark ad, which you can boost their post. Did you know that?
Mm-mm.
That's the key thing about TikTok. That's the thing that Facebook ads doesn't have. Did you know that if you set your remarketing audiences, your pixels and your email addresses, that you can retarget into TikTok as well? Did you know that lead ads, which is what B2B marketing is all about, right? Generating leads that turn into phone calls, Salesforce, sales qualified leads, marketing qualified, like all that, all the way to a closed won deal, into the different systems, CRMs, HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, whatever you have. Did you know that the lead ads that work on LinkedIn or especially Facebook, you can copy that same format into TikTok and it'll retarget the same audience and do even better, even if it's a 50 plus crowd and you're selling, enterprise software, whatever, selling things that are not like consumer 15-year-old girl dancing, singing kinds of things. Did you know that? Did you know TikTok's the number one place for B2B? If you're an expert and you have some kind of knowledge, and what you do is you just share one tip at a time in 15 seconds, and that's your TikTok, and you make lots of them because you just share one tip at a time. Did you know that? So this is what I learned from people who are doing super well on TikTok, especially from the standpoint of being some kind of expert or running a sales team or any, like, not the stereotype of the teenager that's doing silly things on TikTok, which is the same reputation Facebook had in 2007 that TikTok has today. But like Facebook back in 2007, the traffic was cheap. We could get it for super. You could suck and you could do really well. And it's kind of the case right now on TikTok, but that's only going to last so long. So that's what I've been doing. I've been using these channels that are arbitrage, that are cheaper, not because I just want to be on TikTok or I'm trying to be famous, but because I can get cheaper leads, better quality leads, cheaper leads. Who doesn't want that? On YouTube, on TikTok, and on Twitter. And so I'm not completely reliant upon LinkedIn, Google, and Facebook anymore because, I've had I got kicked off of Facebook. Well, it was my fault because I lost my two-factor on my old device, but I wasn't on Facebook for a month. And the Facebook team reset my two-factor and all that, let me back in. But in that time, I've had to learn these other channels, and I've learned how dollar a day works super well in lead gen in industries that are boring, that are not consumer facing. That's what I've learned. And I kind of don't want to tell other people about this because I'd like to keep this B2B secret to myself.
I love it. Super cool. Oh man, there's kind of this, I'm almost seeing like this twofold, it's a combination effect of, on one side, creating great content, and then, but on the other side, targeting it to the right folks. And I'd love for you to first kind of talk about the targeting for a second. If you wouldn't mind, for folks that aren't familiar with Dollar a Day, just like 30 seconds on that, and then tell me a little bit more about the targeting, and for like the folks in B2B that are listening, like ABM, right? Account-based marketing. This is kind of like in that world of like super hyper targeted ads that are maybe one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many. And I'd love to hear about that from a Dollar a Day standpoint, because I haven't heard that. I've only heard from like more, I've heard from kind of the original Dollar a Day strategy, but I'd love to hear more about that, please.
Okay. So John Miller was my client 10 years ago, and I think we admitted on the podcast a couple times that the Dollar a Day strategy and the ads that we were driving through social media were his number one source of leads. And then eventually he sold Marketo, all right, as you know, and all these other things. And in B2B, you have to have a very, very defined audience, right? You're not just reaching anybody who wants to buy Cheerios. You're reaching a very particular job title, people who buy products or work with this company also would like to work with your company. Like you know, there's ways of figuring out exactly who the ideal buyer is, and that's what ABM is, where you narrow it down. But with Dollar a Day, we're doing that, but we're using the kind of outreach that an SDR would do is what we're using these ads to do. So the ads become your SDRs. How many people can you reach for $1 a day, Taylor?
With an SDR, or I guess depending on which platform.
For $1 a day, how many people can you reach when you run ads on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, whatever? How many people can you reach for $1 a day? Guess.
Yeah, it depends, I guess. Yeah, I've seen it all over the map.
So take a guess. Put out a number.
Okay. Let's say 50 people.
Yeah, that's about right. 50 people. So 20 to 100 people you can reach, depending on your quality score and how competitive that audience is and all that. So if you can only reach 50 people, you better be super well targeted. So if I'm selling enterprise accounting software in the dental space to dentists who have at least 5 locations, not to any dentist, not to people that are going to dental school, not to Sally who's getting her teeth drilled, then I have to be super specific. So how do I figure out the targeting related to that? Well, I'm not going to target just dentists. That's way too big. I'm going to target people who use certain kinds of software. So if they're using Dentrix software, they're probably a little more sophisticated. If they're using QuickBooks, that's pretty much like everyone on the planet. I'm not going to do that. So I have to choose the right target. If I choose the right target and I have content that's going to appeal to that particular client base where it's informative and it doesn't look like, hey, book a call with me for 15 minutes and let's discuss your needs. That's not what I'm saying. You can use $1 a day for that. The most powerful use of $1 a day is, let's say that I'm interviewing someone who uses, let's say I'm targeting, just back to this example, people who own at least 3 locations that are med spas. Well, if I'm targeting people who are using Zenoti, then they're probably in that group. So if I target Zenoti on LinkedIn or on Twitter, or I target the CEO of Zenoti, or I target the conferences like AmSpa that these guys go to, it's probably going to get my target. But if I'm spending $1 a day and I'm only reaching 50 people, then I better have super high engagement. I better have super high relevancy. I better have content that actually works. So if I interview Sam Tejada and I target Sam Tejada's fans, how good do you think that relevancy is?
Pretty high, yeah, especially
pretty good. And so
if you've
when we do $1 a day, we're setting a minimum threshold of 10% engagement. So if you don't get at least 10% of people clicking on your stuff, you have something wrong with the intersection of your content and targeting. So I did a podcast with Caleb Williams, who is the lighthouse in financial services for insurance agents. So if you're an insurance agent, let's say you sell overfunded life insurance, then you probably know who Caleb Williams is because he keynotes at NAFA. And so we did this podcast. We chopped it up into different pieces, and it's actually showing how he grew a 7-figure, 8-figure service selling selling life insurance, which is a tough thing to sell, you can imagine. And we targeted all the people who were members of NAFA. And we said NAFA Washington, D.C., NAFA, Arizona, NAFA North Dakota, and all these different groups. And our link click rate was 37%. So 37% of the people, as they're scrolling through, they clicked on it, right? Because they saw some content with me and Caleb saying, hey, if you're a financial services advisor, then here's 3 things that you need to do on whatever it is. Like, oh, really? I know who that guy is. So the targeting's super, super relevant. Right? I'm not just targeting anyone on the planet. And so of the 37% of these people that clicked on it that went to the landing page says, hey, Dennis and I created this free course on how to do whatever, which is just a few videos. We call it a course, call it a program, whatever. It's just a video.
Yeah.
And you get 20% of these people to sign up. And it costs us almost nothing because we're spending $1 a day. And that ad's now run for a year and a half now. And it's still working at 35, 36, 37% click-through rate. So I'd say if you're running ads, there's many things you're looking at, like how many leads you're getting, cost per lead, conversion rate, all that kind of stuff. But the first thing I would ask is, what is your click-through rate on your ad?
Hmm.
And if it's not 10%, you're doing something wrong, right? If your
I
click-through
mean,
rate, the average click-through rate is like 0.5%, if you're lucky, right?
yeah,
That means
yeah.
99.5% of people scrolled past you and didn't think your stuff was, you're spamming basically. You don't realize you're a
Hmm.
spammer because you think spammers do Viagra. No, if your ad gets less than 10% CTR, you are a spammer.
Hmm.
So dollar a day works really well. It's super laser targeted. It's not just spray and pray everywhere. It's like, I know exactly who my target is. I'm going to show them high authority content where I'm sharing expertise. If they don't know who I am, which is what the case is in B2B, 99% of the time, B2B, they don't know who you are. You think people know who you are, but they don't know who you are, right? They don't even know who I am, right? I'm the dollar a day guy. Who's this random guy wearing red that Taylor's talking to? And who knows how many people are going to see this, right? But if we know it's people that are B2B and their marketing and sales is not doing as well as it could be, and they're trying to scale it and they want to run ads, but they tried to hire an agency or whatever, then this is the thing that you need to do. You don't need an agency to do this anyway.
Totally. I love it. So cool. And um, I think the standard of 10% click-through rates is, I'm not a paid media or digital, especially from the paid advertising side, expert, but I've never experienced that. And I think that bar is a really cool, kind of in inverted way of looking at this problem of obviously getting folks' attention, number one, but then also actually getting a good ROI on paid media all the way through, and starting out from the very top, not trying to convert down below the funnel, which I think what most people try to do, with any kind of the marketing channels and distribution. Super cool. So I love dollar a day as kind of a framework for hyper targeted, hyper relevant, getting in front of your ideal customer, your ideal buyer. Love it from paid media. It sounds like there's a lot of cool stuff, especially in that book you co-authored. But then following you, I've always learned a lot of stuff in what channels to go after. Let's just kind of switch gears and talk about content. You
Mm-hmm.
threw out at the beginning of our conversation a bunch of just like nuggets of gold as it relates to creating content. I'd love for you to kind of walk me through what it looks like, because I think from my experience, getting started is always hard, right? Starting something new can be always a challenge, learning something new.
Yep.
But webinars or interviewing people, what I'm hearing, your strategy essentially is not even necessarily being the expert, the person that's creating the content. You are more creating an environment where you're talking to experts and you're bringing the experts on to do a
Yep.
couple things. First, just create great content, right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
can always find people that are smarter than us to talk to create even better content.
Mm-hmm.
But then number two,
Mm-hmm.
you're also building your network, potentially, and potentially building partnerships. I heard also building even like customer case studies, like customer collateral. There's all
Mm-hmm.
these other effects that you get from creating this content and just engaging in that relationship. I can attest to all of that. It's part of why I do this show personally, is to get to be able to talk to you, right? Build our professional relationship, create great content, and then all the other benefits. But I'd love to hear from you. How can folks get started? Like if they've never done something like a podcast, if they've never done a course, you mentioned a course.
Mm-hmm.
Should they talk to their customers first? Should they talk to a partner, strategic partner? Should they talk to a prospect? Where do you recommend folks getting started?
So I didn't start my podcast until COVID. And I'd always been on other people's podcasts or whatever, because the idea of producing a podcast or putting a book out there or just all that seems kind of scary. It seems technical. It seems like it takes a lot of time, but it's literally this simple. You just declare that you have a podcast. Here's the Taylor Wells GTM show or whatever it is. Just whatever. Put your name, the so and so, your name podcast, or whatever the topic is. The problem. So think about what the problem is that you solve. It's the such and such. It's the lead gen podcast. It's the successful dentist podcast. I don't know, whatever it is, right? And you just merely declare that you have that. And then what did COVID teach us? How to use Zoom. So you talk to people that you know that are knowledgeable, people that speak at these conferences, people that you admire. They don't have to be customers. They don't have to be people that you know really well. And you say, hey, I'm Taylor Wells of the, blah, blah, blah podcast. And I'd love to have you for 25 minutes on my show discussing such and such. And I saw, last month you wrote this article about blah, blah, blah on LinkedIn. And I'd love to ask you some more questions, like breaking down what you mentioned in that article, because you said in 2023 the industry was going to be like this, and I just want to unpack that for my audience. And it takes some balls to say that. If you have nothing, you have like, who the hell am I? I'm a nobody. I don't have a podcast. But you merely say, hey, look, I want to have you on the podcast, and I'm going to edit it and put it on YouTube. I'm going to share it with my audience. I'm going to put it all across social media. We have a team of video editors, meaning you just hire someone on Fiverr for $20 that's going to do all this kind of stuff. And then when you interview them on Zoom, you use the standard thing. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, today we have so-and-so on the podcast. This is such an honor. And so-and-so has accomplished all these things. And last month he wrote this article on LinkedIn. And today we're going to ask him questions about blah, blah, blah. And here's why you need to pay attention to this episode. Because if you're this kind of person and you have this kind of problem, then this is worth the next 25 minutes for you to understand as we spend time with so-and-so, right? And you've made it very clear. This is not just two random people having a conversation. But this is an expert who's solving a particular problem. And me as a journalist, as someone who's not trying to pretend to be the expert, I'm trying to unpack on behalf of my audience. So when you said so-and-so, what did you mean by that? Right? So then I record all that in Zoom or, whatever, Riverside or whatever your tool is, your iPhone, right? Microsoft Teams, whatever. I'm recording all of it through whatever your favorite webinar, screen sharing, Skype kind of tool is, and then run it through Descript, which is a Swiss Army knife tool made for people like me that don't want to mess around with video editing. Or I just hire someone for $20 on Fiverr or Upwork to do this. And then I publish it to YouTube. I transcribe it into a blog post, which is what Descript does. Or I grab the snippets, because usually when you have a 30-minute interview, there's probably like 5 or 6 little snippets, these little like gold nugget 60-second kind of moments. Then I share, hey, here's one tip. Here's tip number 5 that Taylor Wells shared. It's blah, 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 right? And then I use $1 a day against it. The key is, once you've collected that high authority content with someone else who's the expert, if you boost it to their audience, that expert's going to share it. If you target companies in your space that are ideal companies that you have partnerships with, or conferences that you would like to speak at, but you're not well enough known, then you just target people who attend that conference, unless you get this huge, huge multiplying effect. But Taylor, and anyone else who's watching or listening, most people that do a podcast or a book get crickets. Nobody sees any of their stuff because they're just on to the next episode. Well, every week I have to do a podcast. Well, that's ridiculous. You might as well just eat a teaspoon of dog poop every day. If your content is not seen, and if you're not filming the content in the right way, where you're elevating someone else's authority and then making sure that audience is in alignment with the topic that you're talking about, you've ruined it. If you fail at any point along the way in the sequence that what I told you, you've ruined it. You've multiplied the thing by 0, a million times, a million times, a million times 0. Any point along the time you have a 0, you've goofed this thing up. So you have to set up the interview in the right way, saying, today we're with Taylor Wells and we're going to talk about this particular problem, which is a problem that you. So if people buy who buy your product or service, you need to map out what are the problems that they have. Mm-hmm. Well, it's their lead gen, it's their manufacturing time, it's hiring managers, like whatever their problem is, right? Which ideally has some loose connection with the product or service that you have, right? In B2B, that's what it's about. It's not Amazon one-click shopping. It's some deeper thing that warrants a conversation with the salesperson, right? So if you are talking to someone who's an expert in solving that kind of problem in an issue that you want to be known for or should be known for, then you record high quality content, chop it up into pieces, put it out there, run ads against it. Make sure you have somebody on your team, like some kind of SDR. Instead of the SDRs going out and cold calling and spamming LinkedIn, using all these cool AI tools that do all the spamming. My buddy Alex Berman just sold 5 of these SaaS companies that he calls it AI, lead gen, mail gun, whatever, these kinds of tools. But I consider them spammy tools because it's just automation of sending out messages in the hopes that, because spam is about, sending out as many messages as possible because, only 0.1% of people will even look at it. But our strategy here at $1 a day and high authority content gets super high engagement rate, and it doesn't look like spam. And people engage, and you have somebody. Instead of people on your team calling them salespeople or biz dev, which just means salesperson, call them something like a success consultant or a so-and-so product expert, or something that at least sounds like they have some sort of expertise, or they're here to consult and help, not just take your money or collect the lead or whatever it is. And then when people see your high authority content and they want to talk to someone at that company, or they want to talk to you or someone on your team, they feel like they're talking to someone who's an expert, because that person's title isn't, business development something or sales SDR. I mean, the last thing, like if someone reaches out to you and you see their title is SDR, come on, right? You don't want to talk to that person. You know what they're going to try to do, right? But if that person's title, if they're knowledgeable and they've also, listened to the webinars and read the book and whatnot, then your expectation as a potential client is that this is going to be a helpful, knowledgeable conversation. So it just shifts the whole anchoring from authority by having a group of people that are expert, and you just interview them on Zoom for half an hour, because anything beyond half an hour, people lose their energy. That's just kind of how it is. Half an hour on topics that you've thought about, that are elevating them and not your product, is how you generate leads, and you run ads against it. Now, the network of all these other people, they're your sales team. That's what people don't get. They're your sales team, and they can sell better. They have a bigger audience. They're better known. It's co-opting other people's influence.
Wow, I love it. And we did that little rabbit trail you just went on. We could have spent an hour talking about that, the power of even word of mouth, or getting partners, or the greater community, whatever area you're in, to help advocate, to help ultimately spread your message. Love that. What I'm hearing is there's two big takeaways. We only got a couple minutes left here. Two big takeaways. Number one is interview experts in your area, whether people whether it could be customers, it could be strategic partners, it could be prospects, it could be just folks that you admire, like in this situation, right? Like I've been following you for 5 years, like I'm gonna bring Dennis on, and just invite them on, create great content, turn that into a myriad of different ways. One big area was turning into a book. I've done, before we even did this podcast, you recommended to me to go and turn every episode into a blog post, which I do now. Between ChatGPT and a little editing, I turn them into blog posts. So thank you for that. But even beyond that, you can turn into a book. Love that. And all the other areas of social content. And then the other thing, once you have that great content, we have all the different versions of it that you can distribute, run the dollar a day strategy, and then leverage, and then the kind of the golden nugget, which is like this beautiful focus on the customer and focusing on not just the sales cycle, but the buyer's journey, and actually being more of an authority figure, giving to people. Turn your sales team, turn your business development teams into consultants, into coaches, into long-term partners with folks, and build those relationships. Super powerful. What am I missing? Anything else in like 30 to 60 seconds before we wrap this up?
Yeah, just literally take action, because we listed 10 or 15 things right there. Just do one of these things. It's like the buffet, one bite at a time. How do you eat the elephant? That's it. And you might be consuming this podcast, and just like you watch Netflix or whatever, and you're just on to the next episode. But I'd say just press the pause button for a second and think about one thing you can do right now. Easy thing you do right now is have a moment of gratitude. So I can say, I'm so grateful for Dr. Chris Davis, because he told me all about semaglutide and what that's doing for weight loss, right? Or just, that's probably not a good example, but just like I'm grateful for Jason Miller, because he's the head of content at LinkedIn. And he taught me so much about how do you build a community of fans. And we were in London a few months ago, and we went to his favorite Indian place. And just if you maybe have like a morning gratitude ritual, something like that. Yeah. If you just make one 30-second video like that every day, honoring someone in your industry, honoring a client, honoring a team member that did a really good job and hit their sales quota, I don't know, whatever it is. If you do that, and then you start getting into the habit of making videos with other people, that's all you really need to do. Then hire someone else to do the dollar a day. Have someone else on your sales team, or I'm sure you got a marketing team that can learn how to do the dollar a day system. Maybe do it yourself the first time, but that's my number one thing. Take some kind of small action, which will yield you an initial success, a very small success, and then that will cause you to want to do more. But until you get that initial little piece of success, you're not going to want to keep putting time into it. That's just how people are. But take some action. You'll find it works. This is like gravity. It's a universal principle. There's no need to argue about it. It works. Just do it.
I love it. A lot of the principles I've learned from you over the years have helped my career tremendously. So I'll attest to that. And I love starting with gratefulness and gratitude, and then moving from there. A great way to end it. How can folks follow you? Obviously, you have a new book out.
Easy. Just Google me. And whatever your channel is, you like to watch YouTube, you like to be on LinkedIn, you're on Facebook, whatever it is, I'm there. And I'd love to connect, love to hear what you're thinking, love to hear what you've done to implement, because I love elevating other people that are taking action, especially in B2B, where just 99% of people are just so bad. B2B marketers are so bad at marketing and sales. It's unbelievable. I can't even believe these companies are in business. But take action. I'd love to hear what you're doing, and then I can share your success. I'd love to do that.
I love it, Dennis. You know what? If anybody's listening to this and does take action, reach out to us on LinkedIn. It'll be in the show notes, and we'll figure out some way to elevate whatever you're doing, or maybe even help you take the next step in your journey.
I'll tell you one quick thing. So my main site has a DR 74. So from an SEO standpoint, that is sky high. So when you have some kind of story to share about what you did, what worked, what didn't work, you could record it in a 5-minute video. We'll turn it into an article and we'll make it a guest post. Taylor, what does it cost to rent a link from a DR 70 plus website? And this is key for SEO. You want to rank on certain keywords. That means other sites have to link to you. That's the key with SEO. What is the site?
I don't even know.
What does that cost?
Yeah.
Hundreds of dollars a month to get that.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a permanent link. So that'll boost your SEO.
I might do that. I'm going to lead everyone to it.
Turn this episode into a blog post, because I mean, most people are so, whatever, dependent upon outreach, upon, ads, upon conferences, upon like salespeople or whatever it is. They don't realize the power of building a reputation and the power of, like, if you could rank on any keyword you wanted right now, Taylor, what would it be?
Go to market.
Oh, well, that's a tough one, because I can look at the competition on go to market, but maybe something that's
small,
one level.
Very small. B2B marketing, maybe.
B2B marketing is still a really big one, because think about how many other companies and how many articles, how much content is going to rank in B2B marketing. But B2B marketing for so-and-so, you could rank on that. So we could help you rank on that, because when you have a high authority site that has a lot of juice, really high DR that links to you on the keyword that you care about, that's the core of SEO. And I won't go into this whole thing about SEO, but the 80% plus of SEO is the quality of the links that you generate. I know this because my career started 20 plus years ago building the analytics at a search engine. So I'm a search engine engineer.
Very cool. Okay. Awesome. Well, somebody should definitely take you up on that, and I will definitely as well. Thanks again, Dennis, for coming on. Super grateful for sharing. Definitely put your links in the show notes. Thanks everyone for listening to the GTM News show, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks again, Dennis.
Thanks, Taylor.